At my cousin Marissa's wedding, I found my place card at the vendor table, between the photographer's assistant and one of the DJ's crew. When I asked if there had been a mistake, Marissa laughed and said, "You're basically working today anyway." I told Lee you'd handle wardrobe stuff. I had agreed to attend as family. I had agreed to nothing else. So I zipped my alterations kit closed and told the wedding planner I was not working. Lee looked at her emergency binder, looked back at me, and immediately started calling the backup seamstress. 3 weeks earlier, Marissa had texted asking whether I was bringing the little sewing bag. I own an alterations studio, mostly bridal and formal wear, so I told her, "I usually keep it in my car, but just so we're clear, I'm coming as your cousin. I'm not working the wedding." She replied, "Obviously, I'm not making you clock in." There was a reason I wanted that in writing. I had already helped with her dress once. The bridal boutique had quoted her more than she wanted to spend on the final alterations, so I told her to bring it to my studio after closing one evening. I adjusted the straps, finished the hem, and stayed late enough that my last employee had already gone home by the time I was done. Marissa knew it was a real professional favor. She thanked me repeatedly and joked that I had saved her wedding budget. I was happy to do it. She was my cousin, but that was the favor. Back at the wedding, the printed seating sheet did not just place my name near the vendors. My meal was actually labeled vendor meal. Lee's notes were even more specific. Marissa had given her my profession, written that I handled bridal alterations, and noted that I would have an emergency kit. Then Lee told me something I had not known. The venue offered optional wardrobe support for the wedding party. Marissa had declined it because she had told Lee I would cover any dress emergencies. That changed the whole situation for me. This was not Marissa casually thinking that if a button popped off, maybe I would help. She had made an actual staffing decision based on me. So I took my alterations kit outside and locked it in the trunk of my car. Lee checked her backup contact. The seamstress was available if something happened, but because she was not already contracted for the wedding, she would charge an emergency call-out rate plus whatever work was needed. Marissa heard that. "You would really make me pay somebody when you're already here. I didn't make this arrangement." That answer sounded much firmer than I felt. My Aunt Diane found me a few minutes later. Marissa had apparently told her enough that Diane immediately started with, "Honey, everybody's stressed." I said I understood. Then she asked whether I could just help if something happened and deal with the seating issue later. On the surface, it sounded reasonable. That was what made it difficult. I work on wedding clothes every week. I know how much panic can come from a loose hook or a seam that suddenly starts pulling. Half the time, the actual repair is tiny compared with the fear surrounding it. If something happened, there was a decent chance I could solve it in 10 minutes, maybe 5, and I knew exactly how the story would sound to certain relatives afterward. Claire was right there. Claire had the tools. Claire does this for a living. Claire refused because she was mad about where she was sitting. I didn't want that version of me to be true. I also didn't want Marissa's wedding damaged because of an argument that could have waited until Monday. For a moment, I seriously considered walking back to my car. Then Lee passed us carrying the binder that literally listed me as wardrobe support. I watched her disappear toward the bridal suite and remembered that nobody had asked me to take that job. The kit stayed in the trunk. For the next half hour, nothing happened. Honestly, I was relieved. Guests kept coming through the entrance in little groups. The photographers started gathering relatives for pictures. The DJ tested the microphone twice, and somebody from catering carried trays past us toward the reception room. I talked to one of my uncles near the bar and tried to behave like any other guest. Every few minutes, though, I caught myself looking toward the hallway that led to the bridal suite. Nothing. A bridesmaid came down once carrying a bouquet. Then another came looking for somebody's phone. No emergency. Part of me started wondering whether locking the kit away had been unnecessary theater on my part. Maybe nothing would happen. Maybe Marissa would get through the entire night without needing so much as a safety pin, and we would have one uncomfortable conversation after the honeymoon. I preferred that outcome. Then a bridesmaid came toward me fast enough that I knew before she spoke. "Claire, we need you upstairs." I asked what happened. "Marissa's zipper." The zipper itself had not broken. The tape along one side had started pulling away from the dress near her waist. It was fixable. I understood the problem almost immediately. That kind of failure looks frightening because the back of the dress starts opening under tension, but if the fabric around it is still sound, it can usually be reinforced. My brain had already moved into work mode before I stopped it. The bridesmaid reached for my arm. "Come on." I didn't move. "Lee has the emergency seamstress's number." She blinked at me. "But you're here." "Yes." That was probably the most uncomfortable word I said all day, because she wasn't wrong about the physical fact. I was there. I knew how to fix it. And somewhere about 50 yards away, locked in my trunk, I had everything I would normally use. The bridesmaid stared at me for another second, then went back upstairs. A few minutes later, Marissa came out of the bridal suite with one of her friends holding the back of the dress together. She looked different now, not irritated, scared, and I felt bad for her immediately. Whatever argument we were having, she was still a bride standing in a hallway shortly before her ceremony with her dress coming apart. She said, "Claire, please, I don't have time for this." I asked, "Did Lee call the seamstress?" "She's on her way." "Okay." Marissa stared at me. "That's all you're going to say?" "I'm glad she's coming." Her face tightened. "I cannot believe you're doing this to me over a chair." I said, "You listed me as staff without asking me. You planned around me working for free." The chair just made that visible. She said I was being dramatic. I didn't argue. There was no version of that conversation that was going to improve the dress. Lee came upstairs, confirmed the seamstress was on the way, and started adjusting the ceremony timing. I went downstairs. That walk bothered me more than I expected. I could picture the repair almost step by step. I would have had Marissa stay standing, so the dress stayed under the same tension it would have during the ceremony. I would have checked how far the zipper tape had separated, reinforced the weak area from the inside, then added a little backup security so it would not pull again when she sat down. Nothing about it was beyond me. That was exactly why walking away was hard. If I had not known what to do, refusing would have meant nothing. Instead, I had to walk downstairs knowing I could probably solve the problem before the backup seamstress even arrived. I almost turned around once. Then I remembered that if I did, the arrangement would work exactly the way Marissa had expected it to work. She could decline professional coverage, assign me the job without asking, seat me with the vendors, and still get the labor the moment she needed it. So I kept walking. The backup seamstress arrived about 25 minutes later with a rolling case. There was nothing dramatic about it. Lee took her upstairs. She checked the damage, reinforced the zipper tape, added a couple of discreet hooks for security, and made sure the dress could handle normal movement before Marissa came back down. The ceremony started a little over 15 minutes late. That was it. The dress was fine. Marissa got married. Nobody's wedding was ruined. Nobody missed the ceremony. Nobody stood in front of a room full of guests with a broken dress. A professional had been called for a professional problem, and she fixed it. The only real consequence was that Marissa had to pay the rate she had tried to avoid by assuming I would be available for free. I learned the amount later because Marissa told me. $450, including the emergency callout and rush repair. After the ceremony, Lee came over quietly and told me there had been a last-minute cancellation at a regular guest table. She asked if I wanted her to move my place card. I said yes. It still wasn't my family's table. I ended up sitting with friends of the groom I had never met before. They were nice. We made normal wedding small talk, passed bread around, and talked about how beautiful the ceremony had been. I did my best to enjoy dinner. Across the room, though, I could see my relatives together. My Aunt Diane was laughing at something. One of my cousins was showing somebody pictures on her phone. People kept leaning in and out of the conversation, the way families do when they have known each other forever. I was no longer sitting with the vendors, but I wasn't sitting with them either. And setting a boundary did not magically make that stop hurting. I had not gone to the wedding because I wanted to prove what my time was worth. I had gone because I wanted to attend my cousin's wedding as her cousin. 2 days later, Marissa sent me a message. The first thing she mentioned was the bill. "I hope making your point was worth $450. I started typing a long answer. Then I deleted it. I sent, "I told you before the wedding that I was attending as family, not working. You made a different plan." She replied, "Family helps family." I wrote back, "Family asks." She never answered that. What changed afterward was not that I stopped helping relatives. I stopped letting relatives volunteer my help. A few months later, another cousin texted me about alterations for a formal dress and asked what evening she could bring it to my apartment. Before Marissa's wedding, I probably would have checked my personal calendar and tried to squeeze her in. Instead, I sent her the booking link for my studio and told her to choose whichever appointment worked best. She did. She brought the dress in during business hours. I altered it the same way I would for any other client, and she paid my normal rate without making it strange. When we were finished, we got coffee nearby. We talked about family, work, and everything except the dress. That mattered to me more than I expected. Being clear about my work had not made us less like family. It had just meant neither of us had to pretend my time belonged to whoever asked first. Marissa and I are polite now, but we are not close. She has never apologized for listing me as part of the vendor team, and I have never apologized for leaving my kit in the car. I still bring that kit to almost every wedding I attend. Occupational habit. The difference is that now it stays in the car, unless I have actually agreed to open it.